This is Seth Harper,
And I'm Asher Callio.
and this is the Living Uncharted podcast.
And we're back.
Yeah, we are. Welcome, everybody, to our... Asher, how many episodes have we done?
This will be 15.
Man, we're kind of well established now. We're getting there.
Okay, so I think I told you about this already, but I don't know if I told the listeners.
Okay.
I was doing some totally legitimate research, and I learned that like a ridiculously huge percent of people who start podcasts never make it past 20 episodes. So by recording our 21st podcast, we'll be in like such and such upper echelon
Like a
of
small percentile.
podcasters. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So we just got to come up with content for at least like 6 more episodes.
Yeah, and then we're done after that.
Yeah.
Once we've made it into the big leagues, where
Yeah.
it's just kind of a retirement from there. But
That's right.
Yep.
But no, we are very excited for today's episode.
Yeah.
We have a very special guest along with us that we will be interviewing and chatting with. I'm going to start off with his brag sheet, as we tend to do for the guests that we have on the show. So this particular individual graduated from UW Oshkosh with a degree in TV and film. I won't tell you what year he graduated because that would imply that this person is a certain age. He used to video Packer games, which is super awesome, and we will definitely talk with him more about that later. He's been a part-time DJ for a lot of his life. We'll definitely talk to him about that. He currently owns Lamp in Sugar Camp, Wisconsin, which if you don't know where that is, it's a pretty classic Northwoods, Wisconsin, kind of close to Eagle River. Some of you might know where that is. Eagle River is kind of a touristy Northwoods area. So Sugar Camp's not too far from there. And he's almost ready to start living on that land full time, which I'm sure we'll ask him about that as well. And finally, this individual played a significant role in me being born, which that probably gives a little bit of an indicator as to who this is.
It's Seth's uncle.
That would be weird. No, you probably just heard him. But without further ado, I would like to formally introduce to the show my dad, Scott Harper.
Viva Stu to Seth and to Asher. Do you know what that means, buddy?
Well,
No.
first of all, I prefer you don't call me
Stu.
buddy, but that's okay.
No. I was saying that to Asher.
Is
You
it
remember that?
German?
Do you know what that means, son? And do you know what that means, Asher?
No.
That is Amish German for how are you? How you doing?
It sounded German to me, but I wasn't.
There
I
you
Yeah.
don't know if I've ever heard Amish German. So
Yeah,
That's
kind of a
Viva
German
Stu.
dialect is what they use.
Okay.
So yeah, I just thought I would introduce that way. Actually, I thought you were going to introduce me as Jim Rome, because Jim Rome, the famous sportscaster, has land up in Eagle River. So maybe if anybody knew that, they were probably thinking, oh, he's going to be interviewing Jim Rome. Well, I'm sorry to disappoint any of your podcast people. It's just Seth's dad.
Well, Dad, I hate
Scott, I
to
feel like you should give us your best sportscaster impression.
Oh man, to start off that way. Well, I'm so far removed from the sports world, though. I'm an Amish driver now, so
Right.
I actually would, if I was going to do one, I would probably say, oh, it could be, it is. Cubs win. Holy cow! If you remember Harry Carey back,
which
in the
is
day.
extremely offensive to this show, as I'm a Brewers fan, and he is too. So I'm not sure why he chose that impression.
Well, okay, we'll go with you then.
Yeah,
How
that's
about-
right,
how about
Bob
we do
Uecker.
you? Yeah.
Yeah,
Get up, get out of here, go
That's right.
for Gomer.
there we go.
Nice.
Uh,
That's exactly what I was looking for.
All right.
Perfect.
Yep.
For those of you who don't know, the Brewers have a radio broadcaster named Bob Uecker. He also played for them a long time ago. But he has been broadcasting their games on the radio for over 50 years, which is kind of wild. He is 90 years old and he is
Wow.
still doing play-by-play for their home games on the radio, which is it's insane. It's so cool. But so yeah, Dad, thanks for coming on the show.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate you being here.
Pleasure being here.
So yeah, I know a little bit about some of the stuff that you've done in your life. I know that we've mentioned a couple of them already.
I know less.
That's right. Yes.
Less is more.
So Asher's basically part of the audience,
Right. Yeah.
at this point.
But very excited to learn.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, I guess before we get into some of the official questions I have planned, you heard the brag sheet. Is there anything else, like a quick summary that you want to give of yourself before we dive into the interview questions?
The only thing I left out back in the TV days is I did do some reporting and anchoring.
Oh, so like
So nice
journalism,
Yeah,
sort of?
journalism. I actually did some, TV behind the scenes stuff. In fact, back in the day, this is kind of ironic because if you were just starting out, and I was behind two other guys in a sports department at Channel 5.
Oh, wait, Dad, can I cut you off for a
Yeah,
second?
go ahead.
I really want to hear what you're about to say. Let's table it until we get to the point chronologically in your career
Gotcha.
where we
I'm
get to
getting
that
ahead of it
point.
already.
I will be asking you a question about that. Don't worry. It's all good.
What was the question again, then?
I don't know. Just like it's gonna be a great episode. Um,
Suffering from sometimers.
oh my gosh. Yeah, as opposed to all timers.
Absolutely.
Oh no.
Yeah, so like I gave your brag sheet. Is there any just like quick random things about yourself that you want the audience to know?
You kind of covered it right there. I went through TV days and then went when you guys were little. I obviously was doing a couple different jobs. Aramark was the one that I did mostly, where we do uniforms and towels. And got out of that, went into waste management for a while, and then from there went into Amish driving, which is where I am now.
There we
Probably
go.
the happiest job I've ever had, to be honest with you.
So when you
Nice.
say waste management, you're talking about like models would come into I'm assuming your office, and like you would show them how to like shave a couple of inches off their waist. I'm, ass-
Yeah.
I'm assuming
Yeah, exactly.
is
That's exactly what waste management means.
you're managing their waists,
Yep, that's it.
the size.
That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
All right.
exactly.
Well, that's
You got it, Asher.
Okay, good. Good.
Right on.
Glad we're all on the same page.
All right.
So yeah, that's a good quick summary. As we go along, we'll dive a little bit more into detail on some of those things. But yeah, I guess the first question I kind of had for you, is what made you want to do TV and film in college? Like, what kind of inspired you to want to do that?
Well, the guy that actually inspired me was Chris Berman. I don't know if you remember him from back in the day on ESPN. If your old time listeners would remember him, he's still in broadcasting and everything right now. But back in the day, he was really big. He was the guy that went back when they would hit a long fly ball.
Was he just for the Brewers, just any baseball?
No, he's just a sportscaster for
Okay.
anybody. Yeah.
Okay.
And then, he worked for ESPN. But the other one that he would do is like if a guy was running for a touchdown, some football player was running, he'd say, and he could go all the way. And then just before, when he get tackled right at the 5-yard line, he go, but he doesn't. And he reminded me of just some guy that was having a blast, doing what they do, loving what they do. And yeah, that's really what got me into it. And yeah, I graduated from UW Oshkosh and went up to Marquette as a news reporter first, worked there for a year, and then came down to Green Bay to start out as a photographer, a sports photographer. And then I eventually worked into the sports department there. And yeah, it was a great time.
Well, okay, so how how did you get that job? Was
I
that
was
like,
gonna ask,
yeah,
how
like,
do you land that?
did you just apply for it? Did you have any connections? Like, what was the deal with that?
Well, what we did is when you graduate and everything, right before I graduated, I actually had an internship with Channel 5. I had
Okay.
approached Channel 5, talked and got to know Larry McCarran and some of the other sportscasters and people there. And what you do back then, sometimes some internships they do pay for. This particular one, nobody paid me for it, but I needed to get experience. So I worked and got credits toward
Okay.
graduating, which
Mm.
most internships they do. And that was actually a nice avenue to get into TV because they gave me good recommendations to get my first job, which was up north then at WLUC TV in Marquette, Michigan. So that's kind of how you get in. I mean, you send out videotapes, to TV stations. But the old saying goes, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Yep.
And a lot of it was, because I knew a few of these people at Channel 5, they gave me a good, you know, starter point. And then, like I said, I started up there first and then was able to then after that starter point, come back to Green Bay.
Nice. There we
It
go.
is impressive to me that, like, even with all of the advancements in like hiring technology that we have nowadays, that still the best way to get a job is just to know someone or know someone who knows someone.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
And that's, I would say, still majority of how people get hired.
Well, it is,
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I would agree with that. You can't, they always talk about not burning bridges and those kind of things. And there's a lot of truth to that. Because, had I not gotten that experience, that I had there at Channel 5 in Green Bay there, that, I got a job very quick right out of college. And especially in TV, you don't always get one like right away.
Right.
People that sit on the sidelines for, a year or two, just looking around and putting tapes out left and right and things like that. But some of the things that I talk about with tapes and other things now is going to seem outdated compared to what they have nowadays. Because Seth and I were talking a little bit about that, and we'll probably get into that eventually here. But yeah,
Yeah. It is
so
kind of crazy. I'll just say a quick thing on the note of, having connections. I know you guys aren't here to hear me talk about accounting. I'm gonna do it for a little bit anyway. And in the business school, they really stress, like, we have a lot of like job fairs, and stuff like that, where different employers will come in, and you can talk to different representatives at any of these potential companies. Um, and they really just stress, like, even if you don't think you're planning on working for a particular firm, it still doesn't hurt to go and have a conversation with someone, you know, because you never know if that connection might lead you to something else eventually, or maybe you do end up working for that firm eventually. You never know. Um, so yeah, making connections, communicating well, very, very important. Um,
yep.
so along with that, your progression of being in TV, how did you get your role, being a video guy for Packer games?
Well, that one, of course, came with some experience that I had when I was working up in Marquette.
Sure.
Because I don't know what they call it nowadays, but back then, when you're starting out, they call it a one-man band. So what does that mean? That means if you're going to be a reporter, you're going to carry all your equipment.
Oh,
Yeah, and back,
Man.
yeah, that's when you say oh, that means oh, because nowadays, as we talk about being simplified and things, they have cameras and equipment that are so much more advanced and are so much smaller
and lighter,
and
I would
lighter.
assume,
Thank
Yeah.
you.
is the
Oh my,
key,
oh,
would be the key factor there.
that was huge. I mean, I was lugging stuff around and they had backpacks that you would have on the side, and we're not on camera, so nobody can see that. But imagine this big thing of like lead or something just sitting on your side that you're lugging around. And then the cameras that they would have, those were another big piece of heavy machinery as well. Okay, that's how it started out back in the day. And you just, as they say, you pay your dues. And I had to pay my dues and do all of that to end up going to Green Bay to end up paying more dues.
Yeah.
Because even then, when I went to Green Bay, they still had the side packs, and then eventually went into away from the side packs, but then still had a heavy camera, which Seth
Mhm.
and I were talking about a little bit earlier. We might get into some of that other stuff, some of the experiences, that I had. But yeah, crazy stuff. You pay your dues.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you had the weight of the cameras, but like, correct me if I'm wrong. I think I've heard that cameras still recorded onto stone tablets at that time, right? So you have to carry those
Yabba
around
dabba do.
as well.
Flintstone.
Yeah, it turns out Moses was actually there with, the chiseled Ten Commandments. For he was actually just video recording God,
Funny
and
guy.
it transcribed onto the
You got it.
stone.
That was
That's
it
right.
back in dinosaur days. You guys know.
Um,
So
so yeah, but like so you had to do like a lot of work to get there, but like did you have to apply specifically to say, hey, I want a chance at doing the video for Packers games, or like what did that process look like?
actually, the process with that was no, I didn't. And the reason it wasn't was because of what I told you earlier with the internship.
Sure.
When I did the internship, I covered a lot of these guys and I got to know Larry really well, Larry McCarron. So Larry, if those of you that don't know, he was a center for the Packers for many years back in the 70s. And he has been a sportscaster and now is retired, from Channel 5. And so Larry helped me get in,
Okay.
Larry. And then when I was in the internship, I met, was a fellow named by the name of Lee Hitter. He was a news director and I'm still friends with him now. But I was friends with those guys. So they were like, oh yeah, go ahead, do your thing, wherever you got to go. And then once you get that experience, come back here because Marquette, Michigan is a smaller market than Green Bay. So that, you got to still get your starting point somewhere
Yeah.
to come back then to what Green Bay is which is a media market, so if you're in a media market, that's a pretty good thing, and I was in there and did well, and we cover Packer games. And um, I don't know if the thing about the one-man band that I was talking about, I was actually doing all my reporting, all my shooting, and all my videotaping, everything. And I was also, this is like some brag sheet. I was just kind of going through what the third guy in the sports ring of the, sports people do. I was producing Larry's shows too. Which at the time was the Dick Bennett show. He was a UWGB basketball coach. Packer Locker Room, Packer Sunday, and then Larry's
Mm.
Locker Room. I mean, so all of those things all together.
Mm.
And if the tipping point, wait till you hear this. I was making an astronomical $20,500 a year for working about 70 hours a week.
Oh my
Boom.
gosh.
Yeah,
Man.
that's how you get your starters. That's where you
Just
get your foot
raking in
warm.
the dough.
Just pounding it.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm glad I didn't have to support Seth
I
during that time. They would have been, eating ramen noodles all the time.
Yeah,
So,
what time period would this have been? Like what years were you doing this?
well, that would have been from Marquette would have been 89. So then the rest of that would have been Channel 5. I started at WFRV in 1990. 1990. Are we on yet?
Yes.
Okay.
Hold on a second. I'm gonna stop the recording quick just because
Okay.
I forgot to plug in my laptop and so it is about to die. So I gotta
Oh,
Okay.
there you go.
so here I'll just stop the recording. All right. So yeah, Dad, you were talking about um we were talking about how much money you made
Yeah.
for that amount of time you were working. So that about 1990 you said was the time when you were doing that?
Yeah. It would have been Channel 5 would have been from 90 to 94.
And you said you were making how much money at that time?
I topped out. Keep in mind, I was making about 16,000, I think, when I first started. I topped out when I left in 94, in 1994 at 20,500.
Okay.
You're going to compute
So
it out to the hours that
I'm doing an inflation calculator right now because I want to see how much that would be worth in today's terms.
I'd
Or a
be on food
deflation
stamps.
calculator.
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
I'm
I'd be
doing
asking for
I'm
assistance.
doing $16,000 in January of 1990 would be worth $39,000 in
Okay.
March 2024. So like
Oh man,
to start out, you know, that's still not a
Still,
ton,
yeah, a
especially
little.
for how much you were working.
that wasn't what I started though. I started at 13.6,
Oh,
I think, when I was in
okay.
Marquette.
Okay.
That was in 1989. I got a
Okay.
bump when I went to Channel 5.
Okay. So like And obviously you were still single at the time, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know. I mean, for the amount of work, like the amount of hours you were working, that's still
Yeah,
definitely
that's
not not enough
crazy.
getting
No,
paid for that. But
no,
um, but
no.
yeah. So like, what were some of your well, one, did you like video in Packers games? And two, what were like some of your like most fond experiences that you remember from doing that?
Great question. A lot of people think just because you covered the pro sports, that must be like, oh my gosh, the super highlight. And as fun as those were to be able to see the athletes, I think when you say the highlight would have probably just being able to sit in the same office with Reggie White and Brett Favre, because we would do interviews with them and I would set up the camera there.
Wow.
Larry would interview them. And back in the day, I got all their autographs and stuff, but for whatever reason, you take stuff for granted. And then like I lost a cap and a couple things didn't got put aside and whatever. You just take it for granted when you're living in the moment. Because I was pretty young, I was in my early to mid 20s at the time, and it was just you see all of these guys. Sterling Sharp, but I won't
Mhm.
talk about what Sterling Sharp was as a person. Let's just say we'll just say that he was a better athlete than he was a person.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, I feel like that's the case for a lot of athletes.
Not no no
So,
not really though, because both Reggie and Favre were really great guys.
okay.
I love
Mm.
those guys. They were just, down to earth. Brett would call me by my nickname and different things like that.
Which was
Haji. Now you're gonna ask how I got that name. Oh my God.
we'll ask you about that later
Later.
because I know that is a fun story. We'll get
Yeah.
into that
Okay.
later.
All right.
Yeah. Um, that is super cool that you got to like be around them all the time. And
That was one of my questions was like how much time did you get to spend with like getting to know players and stuff?
Well, on a personal level, I wouldn't say a ton, but on a reporter to athlete type of basis, I think it was a lot.
yeah,
Because we would go down to the field, their practice field, where they would practice right across from Lambeau Field and everything there. And that was like virtually every day, once training camp started and everything. So you're down there, sitting in camp, watching them. You watch all the little kids riding their bikes, getting to have ride their bikes across to the practice, field and all of that. And then, we stick around, get as we call it, B-roll, which was the video. And then at the end of practice, you stuck around to do interviews with them and then with the coach too. So
there you go. Good
Mm.
deal. Um, one other thing that I wanted to ask about regarding this job, because I know we were talking about it a little bit on the way here. So like give the listening audience uh a description of what it was like to record the games and then get film from one place to another.
yeah. What did Asher say? Yabba dabba do?
I think that was what you said.
Yeah,
Yeah, he said, yeah, back in
yeah.
the Flintstones
Stone
era. Yeah.
tablets, yeah.
Stone tablets, which, yeah, you guys even know what the Flintstones are. But it was kind of like that because what we would do is during the game, we would have video cameras that the actual videotape looked, you remember what cassettes look like little audio
Yeah.
cassettes, right? Yeah.
Yep.
They looked like that, but they would actually be a video cassette. So it was small. When we would get done, we would run that to the airport when the game would finish. Let's say I was at the Metrodome covering a game with the Vikings. I would run that out to the airport, and then we'd get to the airport. I would get on a payphone. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, a payphone, and I would call Larry back in Green Bay, and I would say, "Okay, Larry, here's the scoop." I had taken notes during the game and everything. I'd say at 3 minutes and 23 seconds, in the first quarter, Favre threw a touchdown to Sterling Sharp, to go up 7-0. Blah blah blah, and that would sue like that through the whole thing. And he would take quick notes for about 5 minutes or so, all of what I said to him over the payphone. And then I would give those tapes to some Packer personnel. They would have their Packer, plane that they would all fly
hmm
back on,
Yeah.
and they would fly it back to Austin Straubel in Green Bay. And then somebody from Green Bay that would be one of the interns, back at Channel 5, they would then drive out to Austin Straubel to pick up that tape then from the Packer personnel, then drive it back to Channel 5 and give it to Larry.
That's insane.
Yeah, that was crazy. That's how we did things back then.
Man, that's so
The
wild.
legwork.
A
Yeah.
lot of it. Yeah, and when you're talking about leg work, that's actually why I got to be honest with you. I enjoyed from a peaceful standpoint doing high school football games actually a lot more than pro football. I mean, a lot of people will
Yeah.
go, "Are you kidding me?" But I'm talking about from getting to just unwind
Yeah.
because Packer games and pro sports are so much work. You had
Yeah.
to hoof it. And then you have to get in position. When you're on the sidelines, you're jostling people for position to try to get a good shot and videotape a good shot. Because if you just sit in one spot, you're going to get bad shots all the time.
Right.
So
Yeah.
when the ball moves, then obviously you got to move. You want
Right.
to get towards the
Mm.
end zone so you can get a shot. A good shot would be with the ball coming into view while you're, in the camera. Like if you ever watch NFL films, all those guys have these shots with the quarterback way in the background. The ball comes and it's flying through the air, and
Yeah.
then you see the receiver catch it, right?
Yeah.
Like
Hmm.
that. If you want to get those good shots, you got to run and you got to hustle. So it was a lot of work. I mean, I don't, it was cool, but as I told you about the money that you made, it was a lot of work for that kind of
Right.
money.
Yeah.
The high
Yeah.
school football game was a cinch. You just go and you shoot video of that. You get to sit on the sidelines, and just relaxing is what it was for.
Dang.
Mm.
That makes a lot of sense, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been less stressful. But
I think it's interesting, like you said, both are good for different reasons. Like I think there's certainly a time where you probably want to have like the high energy, but also the high stress of like covering a pro sports game. Like you want to be able to tell that story to your kids someday.
like he's doing right
Absolutely.
Um,
now.
and on a
Yeah.
podcast, you want to be able to talk about it someday. But
And here
then
I am.
Yeah.
you get to a point where it's like, all right, that was fun, but it's a lot of work.
Well, exactly. And don't get me wrong, I don't ever regret it because I always said to myself, I got to get in and do this sports thing so that someday I never regret it. Had I
Mm,
Yeah.
not gotten into it, I
yeah.
would be sitting here talking to you guys going, "Oh, you know what, guys? I messed up. I
Mm.
had this passion. I never followed my dreams, and then here I am or whatever. I don't have any regrets because it was a lot, like I said, a lot of work. And I had a couple opportunities to go to other places in other states, but for other various reasons, my mom wanting me to stick around, be closer to home and different things. I didn't, but I have no regrets.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's really cool to hear. I feel like it's a good message for people in general. Just like, if you have a dream, why not pursue it? So,
Yeah.
um, awesome. Well, yeah, so you did that for a while. What was kind of the I don't know if breaking point is the right word, but what caused you to finally decide, hey, I want to stop doing this and try doing something else?
It was a lot of work. No, I think the money, as I told you about too, I looked at it and I thought, in order to make a career out of this and to get to be like, say, a big time sportscaster or something like that, if I'm doing this at this level for $20,000, a year, what am I going to have? What's it going to take to be able to get to be,
Yeah.
say, in a big market, have a name or whatever? Because I've talked to guys that are in big markets,
Hmm.
and I got to be honest with you, not all of them are that happy.
Yeah,
I'm just
that's
being
fair.
honest with you, because some of them know they're away from their family. And one thing that I never regret in getting out of that and then going into my other career choices is that I was able to be there for Seth and Levi as they were little. In any job that I had, yeah, some of them are different or whatever, but I tried to get myself so that at nights and at weekends I could stick around and be around for them.
Yeah,
Had I
Yeah.
been and did this as a career, and I got to be honest with you, I would have been on the road all the time.
right.
You guys would have never saw me unless you traveled with me or something like that. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Yeah, like the off season maybe,
Yeah,
we'd see
yeah.
you a little bit more, but
It's like a coach in the NFL
right.
right now.
Yeah.
Any coach you look at in the NFL, and some of them have troubled children. I mean, I hate to say it that way, and it's not because they're bad people, it's because
Yeah,
they were never there.
right. Because yeah, especially I feel like yeah, if you're a coach, like during the NFL season, you're basically living at the, stadium,
Yeah,
in the
Yeah.
facility and
yeah.
stuff. Like, you're all even if you're not actively doing practice or holding a meeting, you're thinking about plays or strategy, and stuff like that. And so,
Your
yeah.
team becomes your children.
Essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Right.
great. That's
Yeah.
exactly what happens, you
Yeah.
guys. Yeah, your team. I mean, if you look at Andy Reid, he's one of the best coaches around now, right now, maybe potentially in NFL history.
Yeah.
He's getting there. He's getting to be in that, echelon, but he's paid a heavy price.
Mm.
He's had children that have gone astray, and I don't want to pick on Andy. I knew Andy back when he was the tight ends coach for the Packers. Back when
Ooh.
yeah, he was then, and he was a great guy,
Yeah.
excellent guy. Yeah, yeah. A lot of people don't know that he was the tight ends coach there, and I could tell then he was a go-getter.
Yeah.
Just had this streak where he wanted to go. Hey, you got videotape of the tight ends that you were shooting right there, and he was always on top of everything. And I thought to myself, man, this dude is going to be some big coach someday. And look where he
Yeah,
is.
that's right.
Man,
Yeah.
Yeah.
who does
But
he
again,
coach now?
with the Chiefs,
Yeah.
Oh, oh,
you
oh,
pay a
all right.
price. You pay a price,
Yeah.
and he's paid a price that way. And I don't think that it was worth it for me to eventually know that I wanted to have a family to pay that big of price. Again, just talking to other guys that have been in it for a long time and things like that. So no regrets.
Yeah.
Did
Absolutely.
you always know you wanted to you wanted to start a family, or did that kind of come like as you're doing this job, you're realizing like, oh man, like there's something missing here.
I think it kind of gradually got to what you're talking about, that there's something missing here.
Mm.
In the back
Yeah.
of my mind when I was doing it, though, again, talking to other guys that have been through it and the experiences they have, seeing how removed they are from everything else and everybody else, that kind of made my decision a little bit easier to transition to
Mm,
something where you could, if you want to have a family,
Yeah.
do that thing. Let's take Bob Euchre, for example. Bob Euchre is still an icon and knowing very. He's another one, though. Let's be honest. He's had to be away from his family, and my understanding is that he's not really that close with his family, and a
Mm.
lot of it is
Yeah.
because of that. And it's
Right.
not. I don't know if they, how they view him or how other people do, but
sure.
the outside world always views you differently than the people that have to be with you every day,
That's true.
right? Because they
Yeah.
see what they see on TV. They see this great guy who's funny. I'm talking about Bob Euchre,
Yeah.
makes people laugh. But when it comes down to brass and tacks and you got to come home and, be a dad,
Yeah.
you really want to try to be there for your family too.
Definitely.
And then if like you're giving so much of yourself to be this personality on on the radio, how much like if you're making everyone else laugh, but you can't make your kids laugh. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it would be interesting to talk to his kids and see if he could bring that home with him, or if it was just like he got home and just like collapsed kind of.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I don't know that. All I've done is going through my hearsay too in regards to how he had with his family
Yeah.
and with his kids. It's more on what I've heard through, different stories,
Right.
whether read it in in the newspapers and other things. And I'm not saying it's all accurate. I'm just saying it makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes sense, that if you're removed from your family and I think you guys alluded to it before, your family is your team.
Mm,
Right.
That's who you're closest to.
Yeah. Even if you're not a coach, like, if you're a play-by-play announcer, especially for baseball, because baseball teams they play almost every day,
Mhm.
and so, you know, with football, if you're an announcer, like, yeah, you're still really busy, but at least you're not broadcasting a game every single day.
Correct.
Whereas like with baseball, you get off days every once in a while, but for the most part, over 6, or 7 months, if you make the playoffs, you're constantly on the go. And
Exactly.
so, but
mm.
yeah, good
Yep.
insight. Very good insights there. So what was the next step after you decided to leave filming? What did you decide to do next after that?
So then I went into well, Todd, my best friend
Yep.
for years, Todd Krieger, he's still is to this day. He got me into selling jewelry.
Oh
So I
yeah.
did some
Krieger
retail
Jewelers?
selling. Yeah, I sell jewelers
Okay.
for a couple different jewelry stores. Managed one for a while, but I'm just gonna be truthful with you here. I was trying to do a crash course on learning gemstones and all these other,
Sure.
things, and then trying to manage people.
Yeah.
That was
Mm,
not necessarily my cup of tea. I could sell, to do okay, but I'm kind of, to be honest with you, I look at more simple terms of when you buy purchases. The thing I struggled with the most in that was selling a $15,000 ring when I'm thinking to myself, man, how many guns can this thing buy? Or how many,
I
and
would never buy this personally, right?
yeah,
Or something like
exactly.
that.
Exactly. I
Yeah.
wouldn't buy it personally. And it's no
Sure.
offense. You don't want to, if your wife is into jewelry and she likes that's cool. But if not, it made more sense for me to be a little more practical, I guess is what I'm saying. So I
Mm.
did that for a while and then got into some, did bottled water for a little while where I was delivering bottled water and everything. And that was just for a period of time as well. And then got into, which you and Levi know the most, is
Yeah.
Aramark.
Mm-hmm.
Did that for 10 and a half years. And I want to talk about working as hard, or that one destroyed my body even more than back in the day, the one-man band with the TV. Because this was a constant battle every single day with those, and those that don't know air markets where you do carry uniforms and linen towels and things like that to different businesses. But I was lugging those, heavy mats up and down stairs all day long, and
Ooh, yeah.
glad to get
Yeah.
out of that at 48. I worked from 38 when the kids were real little to them getting into their, little bit older. So I was 48 when I got out of that.
Yeah. I feel like I want to say I was definitely a teenager by the time you left Aramark, I think.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
wait, no, if you would have,
You were close.
you would have been done at 48, that would have been about what, like 10 and a half years ago now? 10 to 11 years ago now?
About that. Yeah. I'm 58 now.
Oh, I was almost a teen, almost, not quite, but
Almost a
almost
teen.
teenager.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was more of a
Wait.
money thing at that time to get out of that. I think we were the weight on my body,
Yeah.
the thing that it was doing to my body. And then, again, I wasn't making as much as I think I could be making for the hard work I was putting in,
Yeah.
to try to support, family and everything. And then went into waste management. It was actually advanced disposal, then / waste management. And worked there for what, 6, 7 years, I think. Yeah, now, and then got into what I'm doing now.
Yeah. Before we get to
God, did
that,
you
Yep,
just
yep.
say that you're 58?
I am, Asher. Is that old?
What? No, I thought you were like 10 years younger at least.
Wow, you got a lot of brownie points coming, buddy.
I
I just
had
gave
no
Seth a gift
idea.
right now. I got a gift coming to you too.
Wow.
So.
yeah, well,
Oh, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
I mean, I tell people, I think a lot of people are surprised by that though, when like I tell people that like, both of my parents are like, I don't know, like relatively old based on when, you started having like me and Levi, I feel like most people start having kids in their like late 20s, early 30s, something like that. Um, and I know, I want to say you were 37 when I was born, 30,
36.
36. Okay.
Yep. And if
Yeah.
that's any perspective, we were kind of old when we had you guys.
Right. Yeah.
Especially Levi then, because your mom then was 38 or 39.
I think
Levi, 39.
I think she was just about to turn 40
Maybe
when
40 almost.
Hmm.
Yeah.
when she
If to
had
put it in
yeah.
perspective, I thought my parents were old
Yeah.
when they had me. My dad was born in 35. I was born in 65. So there's a
Okay. 30
30-year difference there.
Sure.
So they were 30 years old when they had me.
That's not
So-
too bad. I feel like that's pretty normal for
Yep.
a lot of people. But
Yep.
I remember with Aramark, because that is definitely one that I have a lot of memories from because you did that for a while. I know you would oftentimes like have to like drive the truck home and just like park it in our driveway, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. They allowed me to do that. And then I get up in the morning. And then from there, I would just take it to Sheboygan because that was my route. And then when I was down in Sheboygan, I would bring it back to Appleton, load back all my stuff up, then bring it back to Amro.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so, yeah, how did you start doing that? Because like, didn't you have to have a CD or a specific kind of license to drive those trucks, don't you?
That one I didn't because that was a straight truck and you don't
Okay.
need a CDL for those. The job before when I worked in bottled water, you were just a little kid. I had you on a little forklift.
I remember
in the water
pictures.
shop,
I remember pictures of
putting
that.
on pallets, and Seth's on my forklift with me.
I
Oh, yeah.
remember
Yep.
the pictures of that. Yeah.
So that was how did that work then to get into I think it was just a situation where I was like, I need to get another money one, I need to work into something where I can provide for the family, that kind of thing or whatever. And got into Airmark and just applied there and thought, man, this would be a good job. And it was for a period of time, but those that know me and Seth here knows too,
Yeah.
I'm not a real big guy. I put on a little bit of weight since then, but I was only about 145 pounds, if that, soaking wet. And most of these guys that are doing these lifting jobs, they were a lot bigger than me. And so I did that for 10 and a half years. And I thought, well, if I want to walk when I'm 60,
Yeah.
I want to,
Yeah.
do something else. So
Yeah,
that's what
exactly. No, that's fair. I'm assuming you probably had to be forklift certified for
no,
no?
no, I didn't. At that job, I did not have to be forklift certified. And honestly, when I look back at it, I don't know if the state would have came in or something that looked at me, maybe would
I
have
was
got in
gonna
trouble.
say I feel like
No,
that might be a little
but the company didn't stress any certification or anything like
Where's
that.
your
But
forklift certification?
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
sir, I've never met that woman in my life.
Exactly. Yeah, I had nothing to do with it.
She's got a weird name. That's all I know.
oh man.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
exactly.
so yeah, I remember yeah, you're an Airmark for a while. Um I'm assuming I feel like waste management, like uh aka garbage truck driver,
Absolutely.
in case any of you were confused
And
about
everybody
that.
wants to know that that's
Oh,
not a degrading job. Larry Bird, the famous Larry Bird, was a garbage guy before he became one of the best players in the NBA.
I actually didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's a
Yep.
fun
He
fact.
was a garbage guy.
Yeah.
Yep. The
Um
famous Larry Bird.
I mean
my
someone's got to do
grandpa's
it.
a
Like that's
big
Absolutely.
Larry Bird
He
fan.
actually said that was one of the best jobs he ever had. He said he loved it.
yeah.
Yeah. Meeting all the people, getting on and off the back of his truck, the truck and stuff like that.
That's
He's a a blue pail, lunch
blue
pail guy.
collar guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I
Yep.
did maintenance on a house that was next door to Larry Bird's house.
No,
What?
you didn't. In French
Yeah.
Lick?
What?
Yep.
Are
Are
you
you
serious?
Yeah.
Asher, I was right by that house. I did an Amish run just recently to French Lick, and I went right by his house. I would have been by the house that was
Really?
in there. Yeah, I'm not
I
even
think
kidding you.
this was Green Lake.
Oh, he moved around a little bit. I think he went
Okay.
to French Lick when he was in high school. And then the one that you're talking about, it might have been when he was a kid then, huh? I'm
Or they
guessing.
at least like the people who lived there like knew Larry Bird somehow.
I got you.
Maybe
I
that
was
was
like,
it.
that's
Okay.
crazy.
Yeah. Cool
Yeah.
stories though, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yep.
So you worked in Aramark and waste management for a while. You like, driving trucks, for both those jobs. Um, and I think that does lead us into where you are now, which is yeah, driving for the Amish, which I bet you there are certain people of our listening audience who didn't even realize that was a job at all. So I guess I kind of have a few questions. So like to the average person, that might seem like kind of a random transition, you know? Um, so like what inspired you or like, how did you become exposed to this and you were like, okay, this is something that I would actually want to do like for my career now?
Honestly, it started somewhere in the middle of doing garbage for a little bit because a lot of that was a good living. I
Hmm.
made good money doing that, but trucks were breaking down a lot, hydraulic fluids all over the place. They weren't fixing stuff. There were safety issues going on. And I'm not trying to pick apart any particular, people or anything like that. It's just I didn't personally, I knew that wasn't my career. I needed, it was for a time. And I had been during that time I started watching Bob and Debbie Johnson, Bob and Debbie.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, for years we went to church with Bob and Debbie. And Bob got out of doing semi truck driving that had done for years. He went into Amish driving and kind of learned it the same way. Like, somebody approached him and said, hey, you ever thought about being an Amish driver? And he was like, what is an Amish driver? Which is what most people do.
Yeah.
He was in the lawn business after he got out of trucking.
Hmm.
Okay. And so he was doing lawn for this person that was an Amish driver part-time. And they said,
Hmm.
would you ever want to do Amish driving? Him and Debbie explored that. They got into it. And then what I did is I followed what they were doing. Do you guys like it? Blah, blah, blah. What is it doing? And then started doing some part-time Amish driving with their
Yeah.
vehicles with my own old Chevy Trailblazer. Remember the Chevy Trailblazer
I
I had?
do.
Yeah, that thing.
That old clunker.
Yeah, exactly. I started doing some part-time with that. And then once I decided that this is something that I could really do, and enjoy it, I went and purchased the white van that, the Chevy, the big 15 passenger. And I got that from Bob and Debbie because they helped me get into Amish driving. And how do they say it? And the rest is history. And here I am, a happy Amish driver for almost 3 years full time.
Dang. So like how do you get clients for that?
Well, then that's a great question because a lot of people wonder that. Different communities are
They
different
just
with
call them up
phones.
on their phone.
Yeah, they just call them up and everyone has a cell phone. No, actually, most of them do not have a cell phone. And the only way they have cell phones is if it was for business use. Okay,
Mm.
in most communities. I know there's some that might bend the rules a little bit here and there or whatever. But generally speaking, what happens within their communities through their church and their deacons, they set up rules. And so they have to abide by these rules. And so they'll call me on a phone, and sometime, majority of the time it is, if they want to make a run, they'll walk down to a non-Amish person's house, or
Sure.
Englishman, as they call them. Yeah, we're gonna go to the Englishman, to their house, and they will call me from their house to set up a run. Or sometimes they have a payphone. Why do we keep going back to payphones, right?
Yeah.
They are allowed by their community or by the deacons and that to either have a payphone or a regular line that comes into they call it a little shack. It almost looks like an
Sure.
outhouse,
Yeah.
or as they say in Amish German, house. That's an outhouse.
God
We're
bless
learning
you.
Yeah, God bless. Yeah, exactly. And so they'll call from that little house. And then they'll say, hey, on such and such day, can you take me to Berks Garden, Virginia, for the week? And then I'll say, well, let me look at my calendar. And then I'll look at the calendar. And if I'm available and I like them, and I've done runs with them before, and they've been really pleasant. And I say, oh, I would love to go on another run with you. And so then I just booked one. And I actually say that one came up because I just booked one for Berks Garden, Virginia. And
So you drive
yeah.
that far?
I will. Yeah. And normally I drive and I'm doing the Midwest runs.
Sure.
Which the most common one would be Indiana,
Mm.
Down to Shippey or Shipshawana, Indiana. And then
I have some Daniel and Sarah have some Amish friends that live in Indiana.
Yeah.
Nice.
There you go.
Yeah. And there are other areas of Indiana that I go to too, but Shipshawana is the most popular.
Nice. There you go.
Shipshawana seems like it's like very easy for someone who's spent any time in Wisconsin, but I want to hear someone who hasn't
That's right.
spent some time in Wisconsin try
That's
to
why I refer
live
to it
that
as
one.
Shippy.
Shippy.
Yeah. Amish refer to it as Shippy.
There you go.
Yeah.
And so that's most of what you've been doing for the last few years, right? That's pretty much it.
Yeah, for almost 3 years now. It'll be 3 years full time in September.
Nice.
What does a typical day of that look like? What's the schedule like?
Well, normally what I would do is, and I wanted to talk about this too, because I like what they do because they don't have to deal with service agreements, contracts, business related things. When they call you, it's my word and their word.
Yeah.
Like a handshake agreement.
Exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like a verbal handshake is really what it is. And so many businesses nowadays in the corporate world is not like that. I mean, there's some that still are, but for the good majority of them are not. And so when they say, can you be here at this certain time, on whatever day that they ask you to be on? Well, for me to be able to get a lot of runs and for them to call me, I want to be prompt. I want to make sure that I'm going to be there and, be on time.
Yeah.
Because they don't
There's
pay
kind of
you.
incentive for both of you to like treat each other well.
Exactly.
You want to go on more runs and they want you to take them on more runs.
Exactly. And they don't want drivers that are, as we call, schluff cups. A schluff cup is a sleepyhead.
Ooh.
Yeah. So you don't want to be a sleepyhead as an Amish driver. If you're a sleepyhead, that's a bad thing because you get way down on the totem pole for the call list. And there is a person whose last name is Lynch, in one of the areas, and they don't do such a great job. So they always say, in a pinch, we call lynch.
My gosh.
That's awesome.
Exactly.